computer. So, hello, Mr. MacKinnon.
Hello, Brenda. How are you?
I'm good. Blair, thank you so much for taking time out with me today. Would you tell us a little bit about what you do and your awesome firm?
Yes, of course, we have a law office in downtown Dartmouth, and one of our primary areas of practice is property. And as you well know, going through our COVID situation, we are dealing with a lot of difficult situations with transactions that are getting delayed or not closing, and having to work through all of that with clients and with agents and with other lawyers.
Yeah. So it's really impacted how you run your day-to-day business in your office too, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. We don't allow anyone to come in the office, any pickups or deliveries. As you know, we're in an old building in downtown Dartmouth, so people leave pickups and deliveries in the front porch. We see clients either in the parking lot or at the entrance to the basement, and we have a company comes in every day at 5 o'clock, and they fog the place to get rid of anything that may be there.
Wow.
We have all our staff at least 6 feet apart, so it's been a challenge, but for us it's working, and so it's business as usual with a few adjustments.
Okay. And
For you, there's a huge change.
Huge change with ours. I think I've got a question for you that from a legal standpoint, I think a lot of people are wondering. So, you know, someone has back in January, February, they bought their house, it's firmed up, everything's good to go. And then they lose their job and now they can't close because of COVID.
Yes.
What happens in that case, Blair?
In that case, if the bank comes to the purchaser and tells them, we're withdrawing your financing because you no longer qualify because you've lost your job, then it's what we would call the law of frustration, which is the intervention of a third-party event above and beyond the control either of the seller or the purchaser that impacts on the ability of either one of the parties to complete the contract. And in that case, they're required to make their best efforts to make it go. In other words, go back to the bank and see what they can do. But if they've taken their best efforts and it doesn't work, then they can collapse the deal and get the return of the deposit and move on.
Okay. All right. So they're not in business. The squeaking you heard was the dog with her squeaky toy. I now have the squeaky toy.
I remember your dog with squeaky toy, yes.
Let's get back to this. So, okay. So they cannot be, that's really interesting. The law of frustration. I've never heard of that before.
Yes. And as you know, you and I are dealing with that very situation where there's a very unfortunate incident between the time of the signing of the agreement and the closing, which has a negative impact on two transactions, and we have no choice but to move to collapse both of them, and we're working through that, which is huge stress not only for our clients but for the sellers on one side and the buyers on the other, and it's a huge problem.
Yeah. She found another squeaky toy. As anybody that does my videos, they know that's Miss Frankie from Fridays there. And Blair, what happens a lot, and people don't realize that when one deal falls, you can have a domino effect of 3-4 deals.
Yes, I've had as many as 4 transactions that have depended on one closing and the other and the other and the other. And all it takes is for one of those transactions to go south, and it has an impact on every transaction because the people who are then buying are saying, well, we're frustrated because we can't buy theirs because of this. So the frustration, that's a good term to use, the frustration goes through absolutely everybody.
Yes. Yeah. I think, and you tell me if you agree with this, but I think now and in the time moving forward until this whole COVID-19, that we're back to normal, there's a vaccine, there's everything. And that actually could be, 8 to 16 months out from now. A lot of people, what they'll do is they will bridge financing and they'll close on one they're buying sometimes 2 to 3 weeks before their house actually closes. So your advice as a lawyer, would you say that's probably not a good practice to do in this new environment?
Well, COVID, that's a very good question, Brenda, because I've seen any number of clauses being inserted in agreements now to say that if because of COVID, we're not able to close. I'm really not a huge fan of that clause because it strikes me that every situation is unique. And if you put in an escape clause for someone to say, oh, well, it's COVID, I can't get my movers, I'm not closing. I really have a problem with that. I would rather just see the agreements be written as they are,
Okay.
and then if there's a horrific event that occurs, then address it at the time. But
Mhm.
try to craft a clause that deals with every combination. No, it's as you know, it's always a bit of a risk buying before you sell,
Exactly, yeah.
whether there's COVID or not. But there is a heightened anxiety with COVID, so I would be cautious about bridge financing anymore. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just had the conversation with somebody yesterday there, and that's what I said to them. Like, if sometimes the bank doesn't do a double check, and here this is so you've lost your job and you're thinking, okay, well, I'm just not going to say anything, and then all of a sudden, after you close, the bank finds out, well, wait a minute, you lost your job before we closed. What are the implications on the buyer? Is that fraud?
And yes, normally, Brenda, there is a condition in your commitment that if there's any change in your circumstance between the time of your approval and the date of the mortgage advance, if there's a change in circumstance, you have an obligation to report that to your broker or to your mortgage office.
And they could then, you were saying the other day, they could actually then demand full payment?
Yes, and then the bank could, in that case, they could pull the financing out. Yes.
So you're already living in the house and they pull the financing, you've got to come up with another mortgage from someplace or you're going to lose your house.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, yes, if you can't afford to make the payments and you've gotten the advance, I'm not sure the bank would ever charge you with fraud, but they certainly wouldn't be very happy with you. And I know people who have, they take the position, whether I have my job or not, I have enough family support and enough background. I know I can service that mortgage, and they just carry on. That's a decision that they have to make, but I would never advise anyone not to tell their bank.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, like transparency is that's key when you're talking. This is not, you're not buying a pair of shoes, you're buying a house, and the kind of damage you would do to your credit and of course, so are there any other, sorry?
I say, just as you know, even something simple like a reduction in purchase price because of a correction with an inspection, the legal obligation is to go back to your bank and say, this is the new purchase price. And if you don't, there are consequences for that. So I would never advise anyone not to go to their bank and tell them the significant change that could impact on the mortgage. Yes.
And myself as an agent, being under the fiduciary duty of care to my clients, when we do have a price adjustment like that, I send that to their mortgage broker. I make sure that, as you know, every single thing my client signs goes to you, goes to the bank.
Yes. And from our point of view, Brenda, as well, and that's a very good point, because legally we are representing both the client, the buyer, and the bank. And if there's a circumstance, if the client comes to us and tells us, well, this is a situation and we don't want you to tell the bank, that's not possible. I have to tell the bank. I have no choice.
Oh, really? I never looked at it that way. So the bank, you think of the bank as a client of the firm too?
Yes. Yeah, we are representing the bank because we're certifying to the bank the title and certifying that what we have in our possession is what they have. And if there's a significant change, we have an obligation to go to the bank as well.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Blair, I thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening here to have a chat with me. I think we're all, walking in this brave new world right now, trying to figure out what's happening. One last quick little question. I know from a real estate point of view where the sales are, have you noticed a decrease in what's going on right now? Now you're busy with closings I know from February and March, but right now deals coming into the office, they're not what they would be in a normal spring market.
No, they're not. No, and that's a very good point. We have been busy for the month of March and the month of April, but now when May is coming in, as you know, we're about 2 months out from where you are, and we are seeing a reduction in transactions. No question about it. Yes, we are seeing a big reduction in transactions.
Yeah, and I track the numbers, every week, as you know. And last week I thought, well, I'm just going to take 7 days this year compared to last year. So at this time this year, there was 62, in a 7-day period, there were 62 conditional to sold. Last year, the same 7 days, 187.
Yeah, it really hasn't had it really has had an impact. But I don't find, Brenda, that there's any great reduction in price. I find that prices seem to be the same, and people are still getting into bidding wars. But
They are. Our inventory is still low.
the inventory is low. But without question, there is a reduction
Yes.
in the number of homes.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I mean, this is a great way to tap into your experience and knowledge. Would it be okay if I drop back in from time to time?
Anytime. And Brenda, I want you to notice behind me, I have a painting of the Fathers of Confederation. And I
Yes.
want you to see that, and I want your viewers to see that, because that's telling us how fortunate we are to live in this country and not in the United States of America.
That is very true. That is very true. Yes, we have to say thank you for that one.
You take care. You be safe.
You take care too. Talk to you later. Cheers.
Okay,
Okay,
bye
bye.
now.